Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tier 2 Talk, the Australian Championship. Kane McKenna, your host here every week. Hope you all are doing well, staying healthy, enjoying the weather wherever you are listening to from around Australia. Bit gloomy in Sydney here today. Bipolar weather in Sydney. It's, I think, 16 or 17 degrees here, rain after 38 degrees last week. So, spring weather for you, but hope you all are doing well. Hope you're excited for another week here at Tier 2 Talk. Excited for this episode. Really big episode for this week. We got some cool new segments to talk about later in the show. We'll, of course, do our round 3 recap, our round 4 preview. We have a special guest interview this week as well, and a lot more to fill in over the next course of the hour or so. Please remember, as always, if you could drop a follow, a subscribe, like, comments on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Twitter. I'd very much appreciate it. We're over that 450 mark on Instagram, so I want to thank you for that. We're coming so close to 100 subscribers on Spotify. So if you're listening to this and you haven't already followed on the Spotify, please do so. Really mean a lot to me. And if we get to that 100 mark, there might be something special for you guys there. So to kind of start off the show here, we'll tell you who our special guest interview is with. If you haven't already seen it on Instagram or Twitter, you're listening to this at 6 o'clock and you're just clicking on. I think the title might also give this away, but we're going to be joined by the Metrostars head coach, Danny Graystone. He joins us this week after his side secured their first win in the Australia Championship against Sydney United last weekend. He'll talk to us about that game, how Metro have worked to get to this point. Really interesting conversation we had with Danny, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. I really enjoyed that chat. And obviously they'll talk about this weekend's trip to West Apia. So that will come about halfway through the show here. We'll do our little talking segment at the start. I got a pressing topic that we kind of need to talk about. Then we'll go into our weekend awards. We'll talk about the team of the week for round 3. Go into round 3 review, and then we'll get that interview in there for you guys. So lots of things to talk about before we get into that interview with Danny. But the most pressing thing we need to talk about, and it's, I hate to start the show off on a bad note, but I think it's a topic of conversation that has been around on Instagram, on Twitter. People have noticed it, and I think it's really, and I noticed it as well over the weekend. And usually we start this episode off by talking about the weekend, and there's one pressing matter. We need to talk about what has happened to Sydney United 58, because what I saw on the weekend, not only on the field, but off the field at Adenza Park at Sydney United Sports Centre, is something really concerning. And I thought we should have a chat about that. We talk about everything about the Australia Championship, good, bad, ugly, open conversations, yes or no questions. And I think this is a very pressing matter that needs to be talked about leading into this week's episode. So, where do I want to start? Looking at my notes, it was a really poor attendance again over the weekend. They had the worst attendance in the opening round when they hosted Bayswater City. This was their second home game, and I think they got around 700 people into Adenza Park there, which, is more than your average NPL crowd, but on the basis of the Australia Championship standards and what other clubs have been able to do, it's really poor, especially from a big club like Sydney United with the Croatian community right behind them, that Western Sydney aspect, and really big club. They should be doing better, because not only are they the biggest club or one of the biggest clubs in NPL New South Wales, but they arguably have the best football suburban ground in the state. Now you look at Marconi Stadium, Lambert Park, Belmore Park as kind of the Sydney Basin regions for football stadiums. And realistically, in terms of a whole complete stadium, Sydney United Sports Centre is the best. But when there is thousands of empty seats, weeds growing out of the stands, like chairs missing, it is a sad sight to see. But it really shows the reflection of the club and where they're at the current moment in the Australia Championship and what they think about it. They were demolished by West Apia round 2, and realistically, they were second best at home against Metro on the weekend. We'll talk more about that game later on, but I thought Metro deserved the 3 points. They showed tenacity, they showed attacking edge, and came away from Sydney United with what they deserved. Sydney United have 1 point from 9th and are realistically on the verge of being knocked out in the group stages. I tipped them to get out of the group stages. I know a lot of other people tipped them to get out as well. But just a sad sight to see. And now I've kind of put down 2 key reasons as to why something has gone seriously wrong with the club. These are just my thoughts. If someone at the club or a Sydney United supporter is listening to this, or someone on the inside knows more about the situation, feel free to reach out to me, because I'd love to know more about what has happened to the club in the time from the NPL New South Wales elimination final, where they lost to Marconi on penalties, to now in the Australia Championship, because there's something seriously gone wrong there in that middle portion that has led them to this point. So if you know more, feel free to reach out at tier2talk_TAC, because it's really interesting. Now, the first one I've put down as a serious problem is something's going on in the back room at Sydney United, because like I said, between that elimination final at Marconi to now in the Australia Championship, on the weekend, there was only 4 players in that starting 11 that also appeared in the starting 11 of their last home NPL New South Wales game against Sydney United. Now, I went through the lineups, and those players that are still playing for Sydney United into the championship are Bailey Rule, veteran Jan Jedovic, Carlos D. Oliveira, and Aiden Milisevsky. So, when you have only 4 players from the 11 that started your last home game, and it's not like there was a 3-month gap or a 6-month gap. It was literally the end of, I think, September, probably a month ago. No, it was probably midway, early September to now. So you had a month and a half between their last game to their first game in the Australia Championship. The players that are missing from that starting 11: Adrian Vladalechia, Michael Glassick, Liam McGinn, Mason Wells, and Mario Chabot. And they have not been seen in United colours this Australia Championship. And if you know anything about NPL New South Wales or Sydney United, or you've been around the scene, you know those players' names. They are big names for Sydney United Football Club. I think Adrian was the captain for Sydney United. Definitely their number 4. So when you have new players coming in to replace those old guards, something's gone wrong there, because it's not like they've been upgraded and replaced by better talent. It appears to be a lot of their younger academy players that have stepped up and filled in that void, because when you're looking at that Sydney United team, I don't even recognize, and I've been following them from the start of the NPL season, I don't recognize these names. I don't know who these players are. So I don't know whether there was contract negotiation problems. I've heard whispers about Sydney United possibly showing those players the door for the championship. So don't know what's happened there, but it does kind of show that their team has taken a step back. And when you look at those players who they are missing, it does kind of point out the obvious as to why they aren't the team that finished 6th in NPL New South Wales, but instead the team that haven't won a game in the Australia Championship, sitting the bottom of Group D. The second point that I think has led to such a poor showing from Sydney United as a whole football club is fan activation. I've been to 8 different grounds over 3 weeks of the Australia Championship, and by far Sydney United is the worst team in terms of crowd numbers, but also interacting with the crowd and making an effort to get people to come to the ground. It was a very sad demeanor mood at Adenza Park. We came literally from Marconi Stadium, which had, I don't know what the official crowd numbers were, but 2,000 to 3,000, I'd say. 2,000 to 3,000. You had half-time entertainment. You had inflatable goals up the back. You had a mascot running around. Like, it was a healthy crowd, and it made an effort for people to want to come into the ground and watch their team and support their team. You go from that 5 minutes down the road to Sydney United, and it's a ghost town. Like, the bar was closed at halftime because I don't think there was anyone there worth keeping it open. But there was obviously more police officers than bloody fans at this game. So they haven't done well in terms of making people want to come to these games. Because you look at a few months ago, they had over a couple thousand turn up to Sydney United Sports Centre for their Australia Cup clash against Sydney United. So there are definitely fans out there of Sydney United that aren't coming to their Australia Championship games for whatever reason. Now, it kind of goes hand in hand when the product on the field is poor and bad and they're not winning games, then you can't expect fans to come out to watch them to start with. But then secondly, if they get to the ground, the product on the field is bad, the off-field product is also bad, then they're really not helping themselves and they are shooting themselves in the feet. And it really leaves a bad name for Sydney United because outside of their, not this coming weekend, but next weekend, they host West Apia on the Friday night. Outside of that, I won't be going back to Sydney United Sports Centre because, well, obviously that's their last game of the season. That's their last game at home, but you don't feel any sort of energy or big game energy when you go to those grounds. When you go to Lakeside, when you go to Leichhardt Oval, Heidelberg, Janice Steele Stadium, Marconi Stadium, Jubilee Stadium, even Broadmeadow Magic at Magic Park, you feel like there's energy in the crowd. You know it's a big game. You know it's a second division game. Sydney United, you rock up there and it just feels like nothing. You can't get excited for it. You start rooting for Metrostars, who are out of state. They're not the New South Wales team where I'm based out of. And because you don't feel any attachment to that club, you don't feel that the club has put in much effort or little effort to actually wanting fans to come and watch their product. And I may be a bit harsh going on this statement and this run, but, you know, I feel I have a fair assessment going to, like I said, 8 different grounds. I've seen different ways clubs have gone about it to promote the Oz Championship, to get people to the grounds. And these teams aren't working with much, they're working with much smaller grounds, like Avenger Park, Magic Park. They're a lot smaller. They're doing a lot more to get fans in that gate and feel welcomed and want them to come back. City United, you walked out and you're like, well, I don't feel like I need to come back. I've ticked it off the list in terms of I've been to a City United game in the Oz Championship. And that's about it, really. There's nothing much more to say. And like I said, this is just my own personal opinions. And I'm sure there's people out there that know the finer details as to why Sydney United are in this position. But it's a sad state of affair. And it's not just me who's noticing this. It's a lot of other people across the footballing community. So it's a bit concerning there. But I thought it was a pressing matter, and I just need to say something because it was really poor, and it kind of not put a damper on the weekend, but the other 2 games I went to was Marconi and Wollongong and Broadmeadow and South Melbourne. And just those 2 games alone made, like, they had to lift themselves up to help for what the Sydney United Metrostars game was. Not that it was a bad game on the field, but just overall in general, it was just a poor showing. The worst showing I've seen in the Australia Championship. So take it as you want. If you feel the same, let me know. If you totally disagree with me or you know something, you can belittle me in the comments as well, because, yeah, I don't think you can go to a Sydney United game and you couldn't have gone to that Metro Stars game on the weekend and walked away feeling happy. And I know they didn't feel happy because at full time, there was a cry of boos from around the stadium. So the Sydney United fans that are showing up aren't happy. So there's something seriously wrong there. And I hate to repeat myself, but I'd love to know more about that situation because I'm sure there's someone out there that knows what's happened. Because you couldn't have expected this from such a big club and a foundation club to start with as well. Sydney United would have been one of the few clubs that, you know, really hounded for the Australia Championship, but haven't shown up so far in this year's tournament. Anyway, we'll try and move on and get back to some more positive news. After that little rant, I'd like to go on and give some positive news and positive feedback. We did weekend awards last weekend. We'll do them again this week. And so starting off with the best crowd, I think it goes to Broadmeadow Magic. They really packed out Magic Park, a really good community aspect and feel to the ground. They got really involved in the game. And I think that was a really good just fan base, and they really care about their team and their team doing well. Best ground, I'm going to give to Marconi Stallions. Really packed out the Palace. I think, obviously, beating South Hobart 4-0 in their first home game. They come to Wollongong, which is an in-state rivalry. Had Wollongong fans travel up for this game. So when you win your first game, it makes people want to come back. And they did just that. I think it was a bigger crowd than last time. And it was a really nice feeling at the Palace on that Saturday. Best team I saw, I'm also going to give to Marconi, 3-0 win over Wollongong, who started off the Girls' Championship really strong, but have stumbled. Since then, Marconi are looking like a more complete team. They're starting to get into their groove, and they will really be tested this coming weekend against Heidelberg, so it'll be interesting to see that one. The best game of the weekend, though, is Broadman match against South Melbourne. Really scrappy game. I wasn't expecting such of a scrap. I thought South Melbourne would obviously run away with it in the end, but they never did. They had their chances to make it 2, but Broadmeadow, to their credit, kept South Melbourne in the game. They should have snagged one. Had a one-on-one chance that was put wide, and they would be feeling like they deserved a point, but didn't end up getting anything out of that game. The last bit on the agenda before we get into our round 3 review is we read out the team of the week for round 3. This one voted by our commentator panel. Once again, starting in goals is Jack Gibson from Sydney Olympic. A back four consists of Aiden Mustafi from NWS Spirit, Luke Palmatier from Bayswater City, Matthew Bozanovsky from Preston Lions, and Fletcher Fulton from Heidelberg United. It's a midfield 3 for this week's team of the week. Chris Donnell from Sydney Olympic, Sebastian Pasquale from South Melbourne, and Yuki Shida also from South Melbourne. And the front 3 consists of Marco Jeslic, the Marconi Stallions captain, Paul Jouat, Heidelberg's number 9, and Christian Soterer from Metrostars. If you want to know more about this team of the week and read why these players were selected by our group of commentators, you can head to the Australia Championship website, where I wrote up the latest article of my work, and you can read all about there. You can also find it on our Twitter, where we repost it, and we'll also have it on our Instagram by the time this episode goes live tonight at 6. So in saying that, we head now to round 3 review of the Australia Championship, where we started at Jan Steele Stadium on Friday night between Preston Lions and Avondale FC, and it was a scoreless draw between the two Victorian sides. There was goals in this game, which is weird to say when it's 0-0, but neither side were able to capitalise on their chances. Over 5,000 in attendance, and I think Preston made the better chances, but ultimately couldn't take them. You could argue for both sides that it's a good point. Avondale away from home, and they keep top spot in Group C. Preston, on the other hand, they could argue that in a group that is this tight, they're still only 3 points off first, and they held the group leaders for the first time to only a point. I think ultimately you could argue that way. I think Preston, obviously, being at home, they've only taken 2 points out of 6 at home, so obviously they'll be ruining the missed chances there, and they hit the crossbar from Jason Romero as well, so they won't be too happy, but also not too dissatisfied, especially with the way Group C is going. Though I think Preston will need to win their first game of the Oz Championship this Sunday if they really want to press and get out of the group as well. So a lot more talking points for Preston than Avondale. Avondale still sitting pretty atop. They travel out of state this weekend to Canberra, so another big test for them, but they'll finish at home their last 2 games, so not too worried for the Avengers there. Marconi and Wollongong kicked off our Super Saturday coverage at Marconi Stadium, and it was a big win for Marconi in Group B with a 3-0 win over the Wollongong Wolves. William Akio, Franco Maya, and 17-year-old Noah Anderson were your goal scorers for the Stallions. The Wolves were reduced to 10 men with Harrison Busney dismissed just before the half-time break, and at 2-0 down, it makes the challenge extra hard for the Wolves. I don't think Harrison was having the best game at that point. He was getting carved up on that right-hand side where the first goal came from, gave away the penalty for the second, and was given his marching orders. So not the best 45 minutes for the Wollongong centre-back. I think the difference between these two sides is that you can tell Marconi is a team that has been playing together all season long, They know how to combine and work together to get the best out of each other. Where you look at Wollongong, a constructed team between the NPL season finishing and the Oz Championship start. They brought a new head coach. They brought in, I think, 4 signings off the top of my head I can think of. So when you bring in 4 new signings and key roles, you know, middle of the park, strikers, fullbacks, then you can tell they don't know how to quite work with each other. They're missing simple 1-2s. They're not reading each other quite well at the moment. So they need to really sharpen that up, and Marconi are really finding their rhythm and are humming at the moment. And they'll face a very big test in Heidelberg this coming Friday. Sydney United 58 and Metrostars was the other game on the Super Saturday. Metrostars 2-1 winners in this one. And, you know, we've already talked heavily about Sydney United, and we'll hear more about Metrostars' perspective when Danny Graystone joins us in just a couple of minutes. So we'll talk more about this game in just a few minutes there. Moreton City Excelsior and Sydney Olympic was the Sunday game at 1 p.m. at Perry Park, and Sydney Olympic finally got off the mark in the Australia Championship with a 2-0 win away at Moreton City. Sydney played a complete game from the looks of it. Ali Agual got his 3rd goal of the tournament. He is tied for Golden Boot at the moment. He got that one early on. The start proceedings for Michael Vackers gave Olympic the breathing room they needed 6 minutes before time, just before Mark Yanko got one back for the home side. The win leaves Group A wide open now, with Broadmeadow, Olympic and Moreton City all sitting on 3 points after 3 games. And they've all beaten each other up over the course so far. So it'll be a really interesting back end of the group stages for all 3 of those sides involved. Gibson deserved his spot in the Team of the Week after the saves he pulled off to keep his side ahead for the large majority of this game. So I think that was another key role in the Sydney Olympic win over Moreton in this one. The other game in Group A was Broadmeadow Magic and South Melbourne, and it was a really good game in Newcastle on the Sunday afternoon. South won the game thanks to a lone goal from Yuki Yoshida in the 38th minute, but it was a real scrappy game, and Magic did have their chances. As we already said, they had a one-on-one chance that they missed, and they just didn't take him. Side note, I thought the referee let the game get away from him. The home fans obviously made their opinions very loudly towards the referee at Magic Park, but I think the game got very scrappy, and some of the fouls was contentious, and then the ones he wasn't blowing were fouls, but that's my little side note there. But I just thought the game got scrappy because the referee also allowed it to get that way. For South, though, they walk away unscathed. They're still 3 wins from 3, and now they just need 1 win from their remaining 3 games to secure their spot in the quarterfinals. For Magic, it was a really good showing, who shouldn't really hang their heads and still have a lot to play for in the second half of these group stages. And obviously, we were at this game, so now we talked to both head coaches after this one. So we'll cut to those little interviews and where you can hear both head coaches' thoughts after this 1-0 win on Sunday.
So these are 3 wins from 3. Put you in a really good position now. You're 6 points clear of the rest of the pool.
Yeah, listen, it was scrappy today. Scrappy wasn't our best performance. But again, a win is a win. We know to win, and that's what's important. But again, we want to get better. We want to be better. And obviously the conditions, obviously a little bit, obviously the traveling and everything, that's what we have to get used to, and that's normal. But yeah, we'll take.
You obviously had control for most of that game, and now you've got your destiny in your control as you had to take on Sydney, and that's they come off the win.
Yeah, well, by the looks of it, it was 2-1 or something. Did it finish 2-1?
Yeah, 1-0.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, well, so that keeps them 3 fighting for probably that spot, yeah, and us, which is good for us because ultimately some players need to come in and play more. Than we can rest maybe someone along the lines. But again, we want to present ourselves in the right manner and make sure that we go to win every single game. Yeah.
In terms of your next 3 games, what are you looking to fine-tune? Obviously 3 wins already, but what are you looking to improve on?
Just to gel the players, yeah. I mean, we want to play a brand of football that's obviously exciting and attacking, but at the same time, we need to understand each other's runs and rotations. So ultimately, we need to get that right. And having 7-8 new players in, it'll take time, but I'm very happy with them. They work rate and the intensity, which is giving us wins.
And just how important is to see South Melbourne fans turn up, so far away from home, continue on the Australian Championship?
Tremendous. I mean, I just said to the boys before the game, we found out from one family, a little kid, 7, 8 years old. They travelled, they took a plane 3 o'clock in the morning. They came here, they're coming back tonight. So these are the people we play for. These are the people we want to make happy.
Tough result there, Jim. What do you take from it?
Mate, the first thing, credit to the players. They really competed really hard. Look, it was a close game. You think about, their budgets and parameters and everything else compared to where we are in terms of the local club. So, extremely proud of their efforts.
Certainly some strong chances, I guess, in that first half. Just couldn't quite find the finish.
Yeah, look, I think we scored that, especially the one-on-one. And, looking, I think potentially that was a penalty. So, that could have been 2-0 half-time and different outcome.
In terms of the other results now, you're kind of in a bit of a battle in equal second there with two other sides, sorry. So it's a real run home.
Yeah, I think so. Look, we've got to play Brisbane on Sunday. Get a result there, we'll be good. I think so, yeah.
In terms of, so you touched very briefly on the officiating. A home crowd here, nice and passionate as always at Magic Park. They were clearly a little upset with some of the decisions they felt might have gone a little more in favour of the bigger name team.
Yeah, that's right. Look, it's a hard one because I'm not going to comment whether he's right or wrong, but it's that's the decision they made, and we just got to move on from that. So we can't, we're not going to argue either way. So.
In your 3 games, you've been competitive against all 3 sides. How proud of you of your team to finish your NPL season, but then come into the championship and really show who you guys are worth.
One of the things we did do was we had 2 trial games against RP and McCain. We just wanted to see what the benchmark was, and that gave us gave our team a bit of an insight to where they are in terms of football. We've definitely stepped up. Compared to the local league, and it's a strong league, but we needed to. We've gone back to training 4 nights, so their level of intensity and everything else was important for us. But, mate, yeah, they've definitely stepped up.
Like you said, how special is to see Magic Park full on a Sunday afternoon in the Australia Championship and giving these fans something to cheer for?
Yeah, look, it's against a big name club, South Melbourne, So, looking back and reflecting on that, it's tremendous. And it's great for our region. That's the other thing. We're obviously representing Northern South Wales football, which for us we're proud of as well. So not just the club itself and the members and the Newcastle Macedonian community, but we're also representing the broader region as well. So we're very extremely proud.
You touched on the next week up at Moreton City. How do you prepare for that? Is there any expected changes in terms of the lineup at this point?
No, if you look at the effort there, that's tremendous. So I think we'll see how Monday's training, see how we fare in terms of the injuries, potential injuries. But overall, there wouldn't be too many changes. I think we've just got to tidy up a few things and work on them.
Heidelberg United ran right over South Hobart, 6-1 winners in the pouring Melbourne rain on Sunday. Angus Taylor, Fletcher Fulton, Bourgeois, and Kieran Bramwell were your goal scorers for the Burgers in absolute dominating half of football, scoring 6 goals in 45 minutes. Ellie Wright scored the lone goal for South Hobart as well in the second half. Heidelberg are just going from strength to strength, undefeated, and are still sitting comfortably atop of Group B. For South Hobart, it ends the Max Clark reign, with this being his last game in charge of the club. The next game, they will be managed by new incoming manager Peter Edwards, so we'll see if there's an instant change there. But for Heidelberg, they'll face a really big test this weekend against Marconi, and I think if they win that, then they'll be sitting very comfortably to secure their spot in the quarterfinals. NWS Spirit and Canberra Croatia were the 4:30 game at Christie Park, and it was another really good game in this tight group of Group C. Spirit remained undefeated after a 2-1 win against Croatia, with Michael Conestabo and Aidan Kyra helping to turn a 1-0 deficit around after Shaden Whitehead gave the away side the early lead. Spirit now climb above Croatia into second, but only by 2 points at the halfway mark of the group stages. Both sides will play at home this coming weekend, with points oh so important in this group especially. And finally, Bayswater City shocked the Australia Championship by beating West Apia 1-0 in Western Australia to climb to the top of Group D. Bayswater capitalised off a bright start to the second half and grabbed the opening goal 10 minutes into the second half. The side worked the ball down the left, where a persistent Paddy Lowry bundled the ball over the line. City remain one of the biggest surprises of this tournament, playing their final home game this coming weekend before 2 tough away trips to end the group stages. West Appy, on the other hand, will be looking to reset this weekend when they welcome Metrostars at home. And speaking of Metrostars, we are now joined by Danny Graystone, the head coach of Metrostars. He was able to join us this week for a chat, and we'll cut to that interview for you guys now. Danny, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining on the pod.
No problem at all, Keen. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining you guys.
So really big weekend for you guys last weekend. Got your first goal and your first win against Sydney United. Went away as well, which you said was a tricky place to go to. Now you've had time to reflect on that win. What's your thoughts on your side's performances from Saturday?
Look, I think the performance was there. Look, I think the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, we weren't quite on. A few mistakes that we made there obviously cost us the goal, and probably a little bit fortunate to not go too down in that period. So that's something we've got to learn from, particularly when you're away from home, just settling in that first 5-10 and just making sure it's a bit more no-risk football played, to be quite honest with you. But look, I think we reacted and responded that and settled into the game, settled into the way that we play football, and probably just settled into the game that we played for the first 3 rounds, to be honest with you. I think everyone sees we're a bit more of a possession-based, attacking style brand of football. Difference being this week, we took our chances. You know, argumentatively, we probably had more chances against Bayswater than we did against Sydney United, but we were clinical in them moments, and I think that made the difference for us.
Yeah, and how proud of you as a coach to see your side, you go down 1-0 again, and they could have easily slipped into the mindset of, well, we've seen this play out twice already now, we'll just, can't score. But you were able to, like you said, get those 2 goals after the halftime break, come out and really dominate Sydney United at home.
Well, it's something we worked hard on since we first arrived at the club, to be honest with you, just building that character, getting the players just to trust in the processes. Yes, it's not always going to go for you. I think RPA was a little bit different, where we potentially didn't create many chances, so that's something that we worked on in between the RPA game and Bayswater game to sort of create more moments, which we did. And then we worked on in between Bayswater and the Sydney United game by taking them chances. So it was good to sort of see that process sort of go through them three rounds. From a player perspective, I think the players are pretty confident that, going into any game that we're going to create them chances. And look, we've obviously had some outs in the squad as well. I've got no doubt that's kind of impacted them first 3 games, sorry. But I think that's now to sort of galvanise the group a little bit more after the Sydney game, and the belief's back that we just believe in the way that we play, we create the chances, something's going to happen for us eventually.
Yeah, and that leads perfectly on to my next question. Do you see this away win, going to Sydney, going back as a squad, really builds that camaraderie, and you get the win away from home? Does that now set you up for the second half of this Australia Championship group stage with a lot more confidence and belief that you can push on and get out of the group?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we know we can beat anyone. Look, we've tested the water against all 3 teams now. We know there were moments in RPA that we'd taken them, we could have taken all 3 points. We probably deserved a point out of that game at least. And obviously with the Bayswater game, there's definitely enough chances there to take all 3. Look, a little disappointing. We've had to travel 3 weeks on the trot, to be quite honest with you. I think the organisation of that has gone in Bayswater's favour. Look, having 3 home games on the trot and having all 3 teams flying out to Perth sort of builds a lot more momentum for them in terms of them 3 games sort of close together. But on the flip side of this, look, we're back to Sydney again. We know where we're eating, where we're staying, so we've got that consistency within the group. And yeah, it does. Look, I know we spend a lot of time together anyway, but we're not professional teams, so spending this extra time together in terms of travelling together, I think really has helped galvanise the group a great deal.
Yeah. And, we've heard a lot of different stories about the championship and teams coming together because of this travel and stuff like that. So we're halfway through the group stages. What have you learned more about your team? You guys have had a fantastic season in NPL South Australia. You won the premiership there. You won the Federation Cups. You've had the highest of highs, but then you've had some really low points, losing the grand final, dropping your first 2 games here. How have you guys molded more together and become this team that has this belief now to go forward?
I think it's probably just creating them moments just to build sort of a bit of cohesion between players. We always work on that anyway. Over the last 3 years, we've had a lot of interstate trips with the B League in mind. Yeah. When I joined Metro, the ambition was to be part of the B League, which has now obviously become the Australian Championships. We've been to Oakley, we've been to Avondale. We played against West Arpia in a tournament last year. So we've actually pushed ourselves out of our comfort zone to go and make them interstate trips anyway. And of course, we've had the Canberra trip with the Australia Cup this year as well. So we're not strangers to it. You know, it's what we work towards and what we build towards. But I think with the changes of the squad in such a short amount of time between the sort of transfer deadline and now, and the injuries and sort of players sort of moving on, it's just given us probably a little bit more opportunity in one-on-one time with the players, just to galvanise and just build a bit of cohesion between players. That's helped them a lot. And obviously, rooming with each other. I don't want to know what goes on inside the rooms, to be quite honest with you. But, they're definitely getting closer from that perspective, and potentially players that weren't talking to other groups before, a little bit more closer now. But quite honest with you, Keane, they're a very close group anyway. We work hard on that as a club to sort of build that culture. At the very start when we arrived. So it's just more probably enjoyment for me, to be honest. I get that spend a bit more time working with them.
Now, I want to kind of lean into your tenure. You've been at Metro for the last 3 years. You've won the premiership in all 3 of those years. You've got a contract renewal for the next 2 seasons. So you've done a fantastic job in really turning Metro into a powerhouse in NPL South Australia, but also you haven't shied away from the national stage. As you said, you've been on testing yourselves against the best in Australia, not only in the Australia Cup, but now the Australia Championship. You've been working towards that, building towards this moment. What do you think is so important about Metro being on the national stage constantly and testing yourselves against the best annually?
The project that we kind of want, because I was with Melbourne Victory before I came to Metro. Yeah. I was really looking for a project within the NPL system. I believe there was a gap to be filled in between NPL and the A-League in terms of potentially an NPL club that could provide a more professional environment, and with that, not just the coaching staff, obviously S&C, medical, we have a full-time doctor there, sports scientist that's been with 3 different A-League clubs is with us. And it was, and also a psychologist is with us as well. There's a psychologist, Dan Abrahams, that works with us from the UK. So it was really about sort of building a project that would help players sort of bridge that gap and hopefully go on to the A-League. That was the idea. And obviously we wanted to do that with Metrostars. We kind of got probably through my time at Victory, I kind of got a bit of a suspicion with the way that football was heading in this country towards younger players, which I think by all means is absolutely the right thing to do. So we wanted to get ahead in terms of the development with the younger players. We've got a very young squad, without Fabian and potentially Barry in there. I think our squad sort of average age is about 23. So we had a very good young squad for the 3 years. And we have had players sort of bridge that gap already with Austin Ayubi going on. James Tamakowski was probably, he was only with us for a year, but we still gave him that platform to potentially go back and play with Marconi and then come to Hong Kong where he is now. We still speak now just about how he's going. So I think probably we've just been so proud. Number one, sort of from a club perspective, allowing us to do what we do, and trusting the club with us. Believing in the project itself, because you won't find many MPL clubs, I don't think, in the country who want to bring players in and are happy to see them to move on to A-League clubs. If anything, from my experience, they kind of protect that and kind of work against the A-League clubs. We're not about that. We're about building a legacy for this game in the country, and this game needs to thrive for everyone to thrive, whatever level that's at. So I've been really proud to have a club that's sort of embraced that, and in all fairness to them, they've reaped the rewards from that in terms of success over the last 3 years. So it's been hard. It's been tough. it's hard work, but everything worth doing is. So yeah, look, and obviously the players as well. Ultimately, they're the ones putting in the work. We ask for a lot more than potentially other clubs do in terms of commitment levels. You know, sort of, but you know, they do it without really a question, and obviously they get the rewards for that as well in terms of their accolades.
And I think this is part of the beauty of the Australia Championship that has brought clubs like Metro, who, you know, outside your Australia Cup appearances, not many people know the backstories behind. And fortunately, I've learned more about Metro over the course of doing Tier 2 and realizing the project you guys have been on, listening to yourself just then. It really feels confidence in me, and I'm sure other people listening to this, that there is a plan for clubs around Australia, not just in the big cities of Sydney and Melbourne, but, you know, in South Australia, which has produced some fine Socceroos over the years. That there is still clubs doing that and really pushing the boundaries of the NPL, but then also what it means to be an NPL club as well moving forward. On a more general basis, what have your thoughts been on the Australia Championship and the competition standards? You mentioned on the weekend in your post-game interview, the defending's been a lot stronger to what you've been faced recently. But what are your thoughts just on the competition as a whole?
I think it's been fantastic. I think everyone who's experienced it has really enjoyed the experience. It's very exciting. There's been some great goals. There've been some great football matches, lots of goals as well. Great to see all these sort of the old historical clubs back in the competition on the national stage again, and obviously fantastic to see so many supporters getting out and watching the games, and to be part of that, you know, on behalf of South Australia, which is such a, as you've already said, alluded to, such a fantastic football state. To be representing the state on the national stage is something that, you know, we're all really proud of. You know, and we're hoping that we're doing it some justice.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, you have your last away game of the Australia Championship this weekend. I'm sure you're glad to get the away trips out of the way and you finally get to return home to TK Shutters. So you go to West Apia this weekend, 1-0 loss in your opening round. Just how important it is for you and your squad to not only put in a good performance, but also to come away from something from this game before two very vital games at TK Shutter Reserve.
Yeah, look, it's based obviously from the result yesterday. This game becomes extremely important for us, but it's no different than what I said to the players after round one when we lost to Apia at home. So look, you know, in a group format like this, if you lose to someone at home, you've got to go and beat them away. Yeah. You know, and I think everyone's sort of taking points off each other. Look, I expect Sydney to go. They're a good side. I expect them to go to Perth at the weekend and really cause them some trouble. So a little bit different team to the way sort of we shape up. So I expect them to go and get something there. But ultimately, it's in our hands. You know, we've got to go into them last two games, home games of the season, of the round 5 and round 6. With it, if we can go in there with it in our control, then that's the best position we can find ourselves in. You know, 2 games at home, if it's in our control, then fantastic. You know, I'd be pretty confident that we'd go through if that happened. So, but obviously West's a very difficult side, and coming off, they'll be feeling a little bit sore after yesterday's beat. I think it's a first defeat for them in a long time. But look, as we showed in round 1, we can match it. You know, we can definitely go toe to toe with them, and when we just got to be clinical and we get those chances in key moments of the game. Yeah,
definitely. Danny, thank you very much for joining us today for this interview. Really great insight into Metro, the project you've been doing there. The success you've got has been well rewarded, and we wish you all the best for the remaining games of the Australia Championship.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for all your coverage. It's been amazing, and I appreciate you having me on.
Now we head into our round 4 preview for this coming weekend. We start the second half of the group stages with the groups very, very tight in all 4 competitions, all groups still to play for. Before we get into the individual matches, we'll go through the groups and read out the points and where teams are sitting. South Melbourne currently leading Group A, 3 wins from 3 on 9 points. And then it is a cluster of a mess between 2nd, 3rd and 4th of Sydney Olympic, Broadmeadow Magic and Moreton City Excelsior. all tied on 3 points. Sydney Olympic and Broadmeadow are tied on goal difference as well. Moreton only 1 goal behind those two, though very much to play for that second spot in Group A. Group B, probably the most, pulled away group, but still very, very tight. Heidelberg, very much like South, 3 wins from 3, 9 points. Marconi pulled away from the Wolves. They now sit on 6 points in second. The Wolves are 3 points in third, and South Hobart, no points from their opening 3 games. Group C, very tight as well. Avondale and Spirit are sitting on 5 points each. Avondale are pipping Spirit to the top of Group C only by a goal difference better than 1. Canberra Acacia are in third on 3 points, only 2 points behind those group leaders. And Preston Lions are sitting on 2 points in last place, but still can make a jump if they're able to win this weekend. And in Group D, probably the most surprising group out of the Australia Championship, you have Bayswater City taking over the top spot in Group D. 7 points, they lead this group. West Apia, they're in second. They are on 6 points. Metrostars picked up their first win of the weekend, so they're now on 3 points in third. And Sydney United still winless, just a lone point sitting in 4th place. And the beauty of it as well is that because we're on the home stretch, we get to start looking at what the quarterfinal matchups could be if these results do hold over the course of the next 3 weeks. So if every group remains the same, the first quarterfinal matchup will be between South Melbourne and NWS Spirit in Melbourne. It will be quarterfinal number 2 of a blockbuster showdown between Heidelberg United and West Apia. Quarterfinal 3 will be Avondale FC versus Sydney Olympic. And quarterfinal number 4 will be Bayswater City versus Marconi Stallions. So already these quarterfinals are looking fantastic, but I'm sure there is still plenty of movement to happen between now and the end of November, where we start these quarterfinal matchups. And speaking of games that can alter those quarterfinal games, there's no bigger game than this Friday at the Palace. Marconi Stallions versus Heidelberg United, a top of Group B clash to kick off round 4 on Halloween night as well. So you're expecting a lot of surprises and a very feisty game in this one. Last time they faced, the Burgers won 1-0 on the opening weekend. Since then, both sides have won all their games, Heidelberg scoring 10 goals in that process compared to Marconi's 7. This will be a battle of the defenses as it was last time they played. Both sides can score goals. It's just a matter of who can keep the other side out. Heidelberg could qualify for the knockout stages with a win and results going in their favour elsewhere. Marconi can also climb to the top of Group B if they're able to win by 2 goals or more. Canberra Acacia and Avondale FC are kicking off Super Saturday in the nation's capital at Deakin Stadium. A huge test for both sides in the tight group of Group C. Last time they faced, Avondale won 3-1, the Avengers' only win to this point in the Australia Championship. Canberra has only played one other game at home, and they did win that one, so they'll be looking to do that again. Avondale haven't been the best on the road so far, 2 draws in their 2 road trips. I expect Avondale to get up again in this one, but if it's anything like last time they faced, I was at that game at Avengers Park on the opening weekend, and Canberra did make Avondale work for it. Avondale, obviously the stronger of the 2 teams, but Canberra won't go down without a fight, and especially if it means climbing up to second or even first with a win, then Canberra will be giving everything they got to kick off round number 4. The other game on Super Saturday, it is the big Greek derby between Sydney Olympic and South Melbourne. It arrives to Sydney. We've had the first affair down in Melbourne to kick off the Australia Championship back on October 10th, and now it is Sydney time to see this Greek heritage game. If South Melbourne are able to pick up the 3 points against their fellow rivals, they'll be possibly the first team to qualify for the quarterfinals this weekend. Sydney Olympic, on the other hand, finally picked up a win in the championship last weekend, and with them tied on 3 points with Moreton and Broadmeadow, who play each other, then it could be a massive boost in their efforts to get out of the group. South Melbourne have shown that they can play clean football, but they're also scrappy football as well over the course of the Australia Championship. So if Olympic want to get points out of this game, they will need to play a full 90 minutes like they did against Moreton City, with all aspects of the Olympic team coming and working together and combining to get the best for their side. Speaking of Moreton City, Excelsior and Broadmeadow Magic, that's going to be our first game that kicks off on Sunday at Perry Park, 1 p.m. SBS On Demand to watch that one. Back-to-back home games for Excelsior in what is a 6-pointer in Group A. 3-2 to Moreton City last time they faced in round 1. A fantastic game in that one. Moreton City scoring late on to steal the points away from the home side, Broadmeadow Magic. Both sides are coming off losses and will look for quick responses in Group A and don't want to fall behind too much. Both equally as important for both sides as they will both go away next weekend, so 3 points here could ease the pressure going into their final 2 games, where the loser will have to win out if they want to progress into the knockout stages. West Apia and Metrostars face off 1 p.m. at Leichhardt Oval. This one will be a really interesting test between two sides with two very different tales at this halfway point. Apia won their first 2 games but are coming off a loss, where Metro lost their first 2 games by coming in after winning in Sydney last weekend. We heard Danny say in the interview that he thought they deserved a point in their round 1 encounter, where Apia went to Metro's home and won 1-0. With Bayswater playing the way they are and getting the results, it puts more emphasis on these two sides to pick up every single point they can, with just 3 games remaining. Wollongong Wolves and South Hobart is the last game, kicking off at 1 p.m. Wollongong will welcome South Hobart this weekend, hoping to reignite their knockout stages hope. South Hobart begin the Peter Edwards reign, so we'll see if there's any immediate impacts with the boys from Tasmania, who are still looking for their first point of the competition. Wollongong won away in Hobart 3-1 in round 1, and I expect them to do the same this weekend and put pressure on the 2 teams above them. We head back to the Arctic Circle once again for the 4:30 game on the Sunday between NWS Spirit and Preston Lions. 1-1 last time these two sides met, Spirit scoring a late-minute goal to steal the points at Geneseo Stadium. Since then, Spirit have had a win and a draw, and Preston have had a loss and a draw. So it's a very crucial match if you're Preston, who are one of the few teams that haven't won so far this tournament. They really need to step up their gear and get something over the line, whether it's a blistering performance or whether it's a last-minute scrappy goal. They need to pick up 3 points if they want to seriously get out of the group. For Spirit, they remain undefeated, and if they're able to do so and keep that streak going this weekend, then they will be fancying their chances to get out of the group with just 2 games remaining. The final game of the round, it's Bayswater City versus Sydney United, 4:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time and 1:30 Australian Western Standard Time. The top team in Group D versus the bottom of Group D. We just finished talking about a team who needs a win in Preston, and Sydney United is no different. Only 1 point from 9, and that point came from a 1-1 draw against Bayswater in round 1. Bayswater, this is their last game at home before they have to go away to Adelaide and Sydney to end the group stages. So if you're Bayswater, you really need to win this one and go 9 points from 9 in your home stand to really put a good push to get out of the group stages, where Sydney United are mostly playing for almost pride and dignity on Sunday. They copped a lot of slack from everyone in the football community. They copped a lot from me to start this episode. So if you're them, you want to kind of silence the critics. I want to be sitting here next weekend and going, Sydney United showed up and they shut me up. They picked up a fantastic win against Bayswater City last weekend. But if they don't do that, then they're almost out of knockout contentions with a loss. And you're left sitting twiddling your thumbs, welcoming West Apia to your home as they fight for the knockout stages while you're just there trying to finish out the campaign with the most pride you can get. So let me know your thoughts on all those games. If you're going to be at any of those games, if you think there's going to be some upsets, I'm reckoning there's going to be a lot of upsets this week. I don't know exactly where, but that's my prediction for this weekend of football. Now we come to a new segment of the show. We asked on Monday a poll question on our Instagram, and I wanted to get more of your guys' opinion on the show and hear what you guys are thinking. I reckon that after the responses we got this week, you guys liked it. I might even extend it to Twitter for next week's Monday conversation, but I think it's good to start a conversation and get more opinion and just fan voices across the league and hear what you guys are really thinking. So this week, I just wanted to hear your guys' thought of the Australia Championship at the halfway point, what you guys are liking, what you're not liking, if you had any questions for me, if you had any questions just about the league in general or any opinions. So I put that on our Instagram. I'll do a similar question or something different for Monday, but I'm not too sure for now. But we got some responses, and I want to read some of them out now. The first one we got was from Jay, and it said that it's what Australia needed, just need up and down from the A-League as a next step. And I 100% agree. And I'm pretty sure if you ask anyone in the Australia Championship talking about it, working in it, fan-wise, it's the natural progression, hopefully. But I think the first step is obviously getting through these Champions League formats the next 2 seasons. Not confirmed for next season, but you reckon that's going to be the case. But it's getting through this and then into a home and away season and playing a proper 16 round, 20 round, 24 round, whatever it may be, but round competition. And then you can start looking at, okay, are the clubs viable to go up into the A-League? And are the A-League clubs able to survive dropping down? Now, it's not so much pressure on the A-League clubs because that's what football is. If you aren't performing, then you deserve to get dropped down. But I think it's more important from a championship point of view that the clubs going up are able to compete and survive on the A-League budgets and needs and football standards and FIFA standards and TV standards, that they're able to meet those criteria. So I think we're definitely working towards that, and the start of this Australia Championship is been fantastic, and it's what, like you said, Australia needs. I think we're still a bit away from promotion relegation, but everyone that I'm talking to is saying that is what we need, and I 100% agree with that comment there. The next one came from Rob, and he said that he wishes games didn't clash as much. Hard to pick out which game to watch when concurrent. And I do agree. Like, I'm at the 1 o'clock game in Newcastle last Sunday, and I'm checking my phone on the other scores and trying to keep up to date with what's happening there. So I 100% agree with you. I think this first iteration and trial of the Australia Championship, there's a lot of things to work out. I think they've done really well in terms of not trying to compete with the A-League. Saturdays you have a 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock Australia Championship game, and then 5 o'clock and a 7 o'clock A-League game. I think they've done well in that aspect, not competing with the A-League. It's supposed to be complementary to the A-League. I think Australian football fans aren't used to the concurrent kickoff times. It's something familiar in the EPL, in all across the world, realistically. There's a lot of concurrent kicking off times. We're not used to it too much. I think what limits it as well is grounds. Some grounds can't host night games, so you can't structure and slot in times in the late games. Teams are still traveling. You can't have games too late on a Sunday because people need to get back to work on Monday. These players are still semi-professional as well, and coaches are semi-professional. So I think, and it also comes down to TV deal as well. Now SBS aren't paying anything for the TV rights for the Australia Championship, from what I have come to understand. So the Australia Championship was kind of just given to SBS, and SBS have done with what they want. And they've done a really good job. And I think come next season, you could start to fine-tune and, put a Saturday night game on and test that out and see if like a 1 o'clock or a 4:30 game works on Sunday. Like you could alter it a lot more around, I think, come next season. I think for this season, it's going to stay the same way. But I definitely think there'll be more conversation next year in the Australia Championship if the numbers back it up. Now, from what I hope and what I've seen at the grounds, the numbers are backing up. But obviously, it comes down to financial situations and stuff like that to see if it matches up. But you hope that's all gone successful and that SBS come to talking table with the Australia Championship, and the Australia Championship can go, okay, we want to try this game, we want to try this. Like, they can do it more concurrently. But also, when you have 8 games to play over a weekend, there's not a whole lot of time to really fit them all in. So there's obviously always going to be concurrent games. But I agree with you in terms of not needing too much concurrently on the Sunday. And the final question we had, it comes from Dara. He says, who do you reckon is the biggest disappointment or letdown team so far? In brackets, surely Preston. I think Preston have copped a fair bit of disappointment and people going they should do better throughout the Australia Championship. Now, obviously, I was down in Preston and they didn't show the greatest against Spirit, and they conceded late, which obviously hurt them. lost to Canberra, Croatia as well. That was a bad result. And then they held Avondale to a 0-0 draw, which I think was a good result for them based off previous NPL Victoria experience. But you got to look at Preston as well. You're in a group of the NPL Victoria Premiers, the NPL New South Wales Premiers. There's the two biggest NPL competitions there, plus the NPL ACT Premiers. So you're almost looking, and they finished 5th in NPL Victoria. So they're not an established NPL side. They only just got up into the league last season. So yes, they haven't been great, especially as a foundation club. They need to do better. I think off the field, they've been fantastic. On the field, hasn't shown those efforts. But I don't think they're the biggest disappointment or letdown team so far. Results haven't gone their way. If they don't concede to Spirit in that last minute there, then things will obviously look different. If they don't hit the crossbar against Avondale, there's little things for Preston that if they went their way, it would be a different scenario and we wouldn't really be talking about them. But again, as a foundation club, they need to be doing better. They've had time to prepare for the Australia Championship, and people know they have the money to back themselves up, Preston. So it's a fair assessment to say Preston. I'm, not to bring them up again, but obviously Sydney United, I think you heard me go at the top of the hour, go off about on-field and off-field disappointment from Sydney United. South Hobart, you could say 0 points from 3 games, but they're just testing themselves against the biggest clubs in Australia, and I think they're doing a really good job being in the toughest group in the Australia Championship as well. But for me, it's going to be Sydney United as the biggest disappointment I've seen from the Australia Championship so far. So thank you to those 3 for sending in those statements and thoughts and questions. Again, I'll probably do something similar on Monday this coming week. Not the exact same question, but something to prompt you guys to get involved in these episodes. I'd love to get more of you guys asking questions and getting these opinions in, because I think it's good to have healthy conversation amongst the football community and just open dialogue as well. You guys are telling me what you guys think, and I can tell you what I'm thinking, and so forth and so forth. Our final segment of the show, we go into this week's power rankings heading into match week 4, and we've had the biggest shakeup of the power rankings so far, in my opinion, over the last 4 or 5 weeks. We've been doing the power rankings. So these will be released tomorrow on Thursday. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, you get to hear a sneaky preview, as you always do if you listen to these on the Wednesday. So starting off, we have Heidelberg United. They remain in first in the power rankings, unchanged, leading the pack in the Australia Championship. Second, there's been already a shake-up there. South Melbourne have climbed 1 spot up into that second spot as the second most powerful team in the championship at the moment. Third place, and it's the biggest jump this week, it's Bayswater City, who climb all the way up to third after their 1-0 win over West Apia. Avondale remain in fourth after their 0-0 draw against Preston. And the biggest fall-off this week goes to West Apia. They dropped 3 spots after losing not only top spot of Group D, but also their first game of the Australia Championship to Bayswater City. Marconi continue to climb. They're up to 6th spot after being in 7th last week. NWS Spirit climbed back up into the top 8 after their really good win and undefeated run they are currently on. And Broadmeadow hold out, even though they lost 1-0 on the weekend. I think they're still very good worth for their money and will be in a tight fight to get out of Group A there. So they wrap off the top 8 for the power rankings. And again, I'll post them. You can always let me know in that comment section on Instagram or Twitter if you think I've got them wrong, if you think I'm going all out on one team, or whatever you guys think. So what games I will be at this weekend? I will be at the Sydney Olympic and South Melbourne game on the Saturday. Excited for that second iteration of that Greek derby there. West Apia and Metro, I'll be at the 1 o'clock game at Leichhardt Oval. And then I'm 50-50 about making the trip up to NWS Spirit and Preston at 4:30. It's just whether I can get away from Leichhardt Oval quickly enough to get up to Christie Park in time and watch a good portion of that. But you'll see me on the Instagrams and Twitters doing my pre-game and post-game coverage on Instagram and Twitter. And I hope you guys have been enjoying that coverage there. So that will wrap us up. A long one here. I got 55 minutes recording time here. By the time you add in the interview and edits, it will probably be well over an hour. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that one. Like I say at the end of every episode, if you guys like this, please share it around with your friends and family. Like it, subscribe, follow on Instagram, Spotify, Twitter, and Apple Podcasts at tier2talk_TAC. We'll be back here again next Wednesday. As always, you can read our new article coming out on the Australia Championship website. It will be coming out on Thursday or Friday. It talks more about our interview with Danny Graystone. You'll hear our Team of the Week article on Monday as well. But over the weekend, you'll see our pre-game and post-game match day vlogs all across the grounds we head to this weekend. So signing off, enjoy the football, get out to your local grounds, watch it on SBS, SBS On Demand. So much good football. And like I said at the end of our round 4 preview, get ready for some shocking results, because that is what I'm predicting for this weekend. Thank you all very much for listening to Tier 2 Talk. Once again, Key McKenna here with you as always, signing out for this week's episode. See you next week, and bye everybody.